I'm the Wildland Fire Specialist with the City of Santa Barbara Fire Department. I want to thank you all for being here tonight for this very important workshop as we guide the future of fire prevention planning for the City of Santa Barbara with relationship to wildland fire. Before we get started, I have just a couple housekeeping items for you. Restrooms, if you didn't see them, they're located right in the back where you came in. Emergency exits, we have 2 of them. One here at the front to my right, and again, another one to the very back. Right now, I ask that you silence your phones and your watches for those that you have them, or for those of you that have them. I promise my presentation will not be that long that you can't be without your phone for just a few minutes. Also, please be sure to sign in on our sign-in sheets. That's how we're capturing a lot of information to keep you updated on this project as we roll along over the next coming months. This meeting is also being recorded. As you saw me set it up over in the corner, we will be distributing the presentation portion of this evening online for later viewing. We're also taking pictures tonight. If you choose and wish not to have your picture captured in one of our photos that we may be distributing through our marketing later, please see Zoe. She's right up here in the front, and we'll make sure that those considerations are taken and we won't distribute your picture. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Fire Marshal Joe Torre with the City of Santa Barbara Fire Department for our welcoming address.
Good evening, everybody. I'll be brief. On behalf of Chief Nickel and the Santa Barbara City Fire Department, I want to welcome you all and thank you all for showing up tonight. I know that most of you are here because of your shared interest with ours in a fire-safe community and an all-risk-safe community. I see a lot of familiar faces out there, and it's great to see people that we've worked with in the past. We'd like to thank our partners in this effort, especially Community Development, Parks Department, Parks and Recreation, Public Works, and our own Office of Emergency Services, as well as our other partners in local agencies, Santa Barbara County Fire Department, Los Padres National Forest, CAL FIRE, Montecito, and Carpinteria. We all work very closely together in this neighborhood and rely on each other all the time for support. As Amber will cover as we go through this thing, we have an EIR that is a component of this whole project. That's not what we're here for tonight, but it is something that we're going to cover for you, because what happens is we create the Wildland Fire Plan, or the CWPP, and if, as part of that, it follows, we have an environmental impact report that covers certain elements of that, so that we always know that we're operating within the boundaries of CEQA and federal law. So we'll cover that as we go. So looking forward to any input that you have tonight. We'll explain what all these tables are about later. But I'm going to go let Amber get on with her presentation. So with that, thank you again for coming, and we appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Joe. As he said, the goal for tonight is to introduce you into all that's involved with updating our community wildfire protection plan. Following the presentation tonight, we will have an opportunity for your engagement as we ask for you to provide us with feedback. We also would like to address any questions that you have. And just to set the expectation up front, I will not be answering any of your question at large from the audience during the presentation. What we have chosen to do is to answer your questions one-on-one on an individual basis after the presentation. We have a number of stakeholders and subject matter experts in the room that we feel would be best to answer a lot of those questions that we know that you have. Additionally, like I'll talk about later in the presentation, we have comment cards throughout the room. So if you do have questions that aren't answered, please put those on a comment card and we'll make sure that we get back to you with an answer. So as you all know, we're no strangers to wildland fire here in Santa Barbara City. In fact, the largest dollar incident loss to the city that we have ever seen as a result of wildfire. And most of these have occurred in the most recent years. A little personal anecdotal history for me that puts this time frame in perspective is looking back at my own career in the fire service. I'm not from Santa Barbara. In fact, I started as a firefighter in a little town called Paradise, California, which probably needs no introduction for its location or its fire history. So when I started here in Santa Barbara, I really didn't know the local fire history, so I had to ask around. And I remember being told, yeah, we get fires, we get big fires, they really don't happen often, but when we get them, they are really bad. That came right on the heels of the 2007 Zappa fire, which didn't burn in the city, but at the time was one of the largest fires or wildland fires in the state of California that was burning just over the top of the Camino Cielo. Had the conditions changed and that fire crossed the boundary in the Camino Cielo and came into the front country, it could have been a whole different question or scenario. The biggest fire to face Santa Barbara prior to that was the 1977 Sycamore Canyon fire. That was 40 years behind the Zappa fire. Several decades later was the 1990 Painted Cave fire, which was just to the west of us in the county jurisdiction. So I would think that that assumption about large, infrequent fires at that time was pretty correct. But that was all about to change. I don't have to tell you all that since about 2008, it seems like our city and our neighboring jurisdictions have been faced with a large, devastating wildfire on a pretty frequent basis, nearly almost every year. Our CWPP will reevaluate our risks to wildfire given our recent history. We will take all of this information and analyze it and come up with updated policies and actions that can help drive our community to be more wildfire safe in the coming years. I'm gonna grab some water. So for nearly the last 40 years, actually, as a result of the Sycamore Canyon fire, our city has been proactively looking at what we can do to address our wildland fire history. In fact, in 2004, our wildland fire plan was developed by the city fire department, multiple city jurisdictions, and community stakeholders. Some highlights of that 2004 plan was the initial identification of what are our high fire hazard areas within the city. It helped us set building and fire codes and standards. It helped us reevaluate our red flag warning plan. It reduced response times for our engine companies. And most importantly, and one that I'm most proud of because it's a project I used to run, is the formulation of our Wildland Fire Benefit Assessment District. That district in the last 12 years has treated 170 acres of hazardous fuel in our high fire hazard areas. We have treated over 200 miles of road clearance through vegetation road clearance, opening our evacuation routes, and we have hauled off almost 6,000 tons of vegetation through our road clearance and our chipping program. That was all of a result of our wildland fire plan and a way that we creatively came up with a way to implement the policies and actions of our wildland fire plan and secure a funding option to see that those policies took place. So even with all of that and the success, we realized that fires moving forward are going to be different, and we knew it was time to update our plan. So about 18 months ago, we looked at funding options for how to update our wildland fire plan. We were successful in securing a $310,000 grant from CAL FIRE and were awarded that contract in June of 2019. We quickly went out for a RFP, or request for proposal, to find a consultant to help us with that project. And I'm proud to say that this last fall we brought on board Dudek, who has been outstanding in the last several months, getting the ball rolling to update our community wildfire protection plan. And if I can have them, I think they're all in red, raise their hands so that they can be recognized here tonight. Sorry, I'm really bad at multitasking and clicking as I talk, so I might be a few slides behind. So a community wildfire protection plan is a community-based plan focused on identifying and addressing hazards and risks from wildfire. Community wildfire protection plans are authorized in Title I of the Healthy Forest Restoration Act of 2003. In fact, it was this act that drove us to adopt our 2004 Wildland Fire Plan. At that time, actually, I'll let you know, like when I first met one of the guests who arrived here tonight, they said, well, the city doesn't have a community wildfire protection plan in place right now. I said, we do. Not a lot of people know that our community wildfire protection plan was our 2004 wildland fire plan. At that time, CWPPs were not widely known. In fact, Santa Barbara was a leader in the state and most of across the country in recognizing that we needed to put a plan in place to keep our residents safe. A CWPP determines what's at risk, and it provides us a roadmap of actions for keeping our community safe. With a CWPP, there are 3 primary components that it's required to look at at a minimum. The first is collaboration, followed by looking at our fuels and looking at our structures. When we look at collaboration, CWPPs require local and state officials to involve non-governmental stakeholders in the CWPP process. We also are required to involve federal agencies and partners who have land and holdings around the community. One of the reasons you see so many stakeholders here tonight and community members. So it's a really great part of collaboration and is the first step of our CWPP. The second part is looking at prioritized fuel reduction. CWPPs identify and prioritize areas for hazardous fuel reduction, and not only do they identify them, but they're required to give us recommend types and methods of treatment that, if acted upon and carried out when we get our next wildfire, they will make a difference in how that wildfire threatens our community. Excuse me. And the last is treatment of structural ignitability. CWPPs recommend measures that homeowners and community members can take to ensure that their structures survive a wildfire. And that's my personal opinion, that I feel that this is where we're gonna see the biggest change in this updated CWPP, is our 2004 Wildland Fire Plan, or CWPP, did little beyond addressing 4 different defensible space high fire hazard area zones for structural ignitability. But there's been so much research and data in the last 15 years, I really think that that's something that we'll be able to implement in this plan. I actually realized I forgot a part. When I was talking about our 2003 Healthy Forest Restoration Act that drove our 2004 Wildland Fire Plan, the city in 2011 formally adopted that plan as our CWPP, so we do have it. So tie that all back. So there's 3 primary steps in a community wildfire protection plan and the adoption of one. The first is to develop an understanding of our baseline conditions. For you tonight, we have maps that are located in the back of the room that will help give you an idea of what our understanding is of our baseline conditions. We ask after the presentation if you can go take a look at those maps. Take a look at them, ask us questions, provide feedback, and give us comments on what you think that baseline is. If it's effective, it's not, if there's something else we can look at. It's having open and honest dialogue to make this plan very successful with all of you here in the community. Once we receive all of your input, we're going to take that along with our current wildland fire plan and all of our updated modeling and mapping and put that together to compile our draft CWPP document. That draft will be available for review by the public later. It will be accepted by our planning commission, and 1 year from now, hopefully, it will be adopted by our city council as our new plan moving forward. So after we have that drafted plan and it's finalized, we will be able to use it to improve the safety of our residents from wildland fire. And we'll be able to do that by looking at new ways that we can create community projects, new policies, and use it as a source to help us find funding for all of these great projects. This multi-step process ensures that our plan moving forward is going to be thorough and collaborative and will be a very useful tool for us as we move through the coming years. So along with completing our CWPP, in tandem, we're also looking at completing a programmatic environmental impact report. The city did certify a programmatic environmental impact report, or EIR for short, back in 2004 with our initial plan. But we realized a lot has changed in the last 15 years, which leads us to assume and anticipate that we're going to have to complete another programmatic report. The programmatic EIR is going to disclose potential impacts for us in accordance with California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. These are some of the 8 issues that environmental assessment will evaluate on that programmatic level. This robust analysis of the potential impacts will be taken into consideration by City Council for the Community Wildfire Protection Plan and the programmatic EIR upon adoption. Once approved, the EIR serves as guide rails for us to work within while we implement our plan to assure that we carry out all of our projects and implementation in line with environmental law. Now, due to our compressed schedule with the grant, we anticipate the CWPP and the programmatic EIR to run in parallel with each other. If you have specific questions about the environmental impact report, want to see our past report, or have questions about the programmatic analysis, please see us. Actually, see Jessica over there by the red tomato in her red shirt after the presentation. So when I talk about a compressed schedule, this is the timeline that we're working within. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we received funding from this project from CAL FIRE. One of the great things about getting money is having to adhere to guidelines, and with the call to tell us that we were going to be awarded the project, we were also asked to compress our timeline for completing this project by a full year, which is a lot to take on, but we actually have strong confidence that we're going to be able to do that. We have a great team in place with Dudek leading us as our consultant. We have the involvement of many city departments, and it's exciting for me to see all the participation from our community here tonight. That will keep the ball rolling and assure that we're able to complete it in time. So the first meeting that we have tonight is our community workshop. What we're doing tonight is introducing the project to you, helping you get an understanding of our baseline conditions, and also receiving your input. We're going to take all of this, including your input, and put it together for our second community workshop. Our second community workshop is going to focus on the risk and hazard assessment as well as our draft CWPP. We will also be introducing our next steps, and we anticipate that second meeting to be about mid-April, so about 2 months from now, which is fairly aggressive, but we're going to work hard to get that done. In order to do that and to keep you involved, we have compiled and put together a website dedicated to this project. We will be posting all of the updates and draft documents and maps on that website as we go along. So what you see now will completely look different a year from now. We ask that you go to that website and subscribe to receive our electronic newsletter so that you can stay involved and continue to provide us with input and your concerns as we move through the project. We recognize not everybody can be here tonight, so we do have multiple means for getting out all of this information. Like I said, our key documents and all of our materials, including the video of this presentation, will be available on our website later, and we will be distributing all of our information through that electronic newsletter. So it's super important that you sign up for that newsletter. You get your neighbors in your community. I know a couple of you are here from the Riviera Homeowners Association, Eucalyptus Hill Homeowners Association, Mission Canyon. That's great. Get the word out and have people go and sign up so that they continue to stay involved and updated with the project. So after my presentation tonight, what we ask you to do is to visit the various stations that we have located around the room for you. One of those is the baseline maps, which you'll see in the back. We'll have staff there from our consultant team as well as some of us to be able to take in your concerns and answer your questions. We also have some diagrams that have all of the policies and actions from our 2004 Wildland Fire Plan. What we're going to ask you to do is take a look at those policies and actions and rate them. Rate them on their success, if they're good or if they're bad, or if there's something that you feel should be carried forward into this next community wildfire protection plan. We also have comment cards located around the room. In fact, I had somebody that asked a question about another stakeholder, actually subject matter expert who's not here tonight. They have a question for them. Put those questions, those type of questions, down on the comment card, and we'll make sure that we can connect you with the right person to get your questions answered. And lastly, remember that this Community Wildfire Protection Plan and Programmatic EIR, it's not a fire department plan. It may be from the fire department, but this plan, actually it's not even a city plan. It's a community plan and it's your plan, and we're here to do the work for you. And the way that we're gonna be successful is for you and your neighbors to become involved and continue to be involved, not only in the buildup of our new CWPP, told you I'm not very good at this, but also after we roll on with the adoption of our CWPP and we roll into the implementation plan of the project. So with that, I told you I'd keep it brief. I want to thank you for coming tonight, ask you to get involved, provide feedback at the stations that we have there tonight, and continue to take steps to keep yourselves and your home and your neighbors and your families all safe from the threat of wildfire. And that's it.